Hi, my name is Eric Shaw, and this is the Big Happy Day Yoga video series. Today I'm going to talk about the roots of yoga, in addition to kind of an add-on to the last video that we rolled. In the last video I talked about how they were related, or the origins of yoga were found in the text called the Upanishads. And now I want to talk about the social context from which they arose. What was happening in India around the time that yoga was first fully articulated was that it was making a transition from a feudal culture, like we had in the Middle Ages in the West, where you had a king and serfs and whatnot, to a city culture, what they called the second urbanization, the second time in Indian history when a really rich civic culture arose with a whole host of cities. These were called the Mahajanapadas. Mahajanapadas, the great places where the people put their foot. Sanskrit is funny in that way, it just kind of strings together concepts. So in the Mahajanapadas, we had a new social structure emerging that was not an agrarian culture. It wasn't a culture that was rooted in farm life or the cycle of the seasons. And it was not a feudal culture in which there were strongly stratified relationships along the line of, let's say, wealth and whatnot. You had artisan classes arising, and you had individuals starting to differentiate themselves in relationship to their jati, to the work that they did. With that, people saw themselves as more unique, and they had more individual freedoms. If you're living in a city and you're making money, you have access to sensual pleasures. You have access to travel. You have access to, because it's a city and because it's kind of a polyglot situation where traders are coming from other countries, other places, you start to see the way other people live their lives. So you can't frame the existence that you previously had merely in terms of your personal experience. You have to step out of your personal experience and you start to reflect on your personal experience because it's differentiated from other people who are not necessarily your enemies, people who you can't just put in a little box and say, okay, our ways are the right way, their ways are the wrong way. You have to kind of change your whole ethical set. You can't just base what is right and wrong on what your family did. Everything my family does is right. You have to kind of change that and say, well, there's some kind of universal system of ethics that we can adhere to. So people had to start seeing life differently, and it had a lot to do with the way individuality was emerging in a new social context. So the old ritual practices that came through the Vedic tradition were no longer appropriate for this new situation. Yoga appeared on the scene and it served people's needs to individuate practice and to transform their merely personal human lives in a way that the ritual, the group practices, which were meant to, in the large sense, actually not only address personal needs but the needs of the season and other desires of an agrarian culture, those were no longer appropriate. So within a market culture, 2,800 years ago, yoga arose to serve the same kind of individual needs that it serves today. Kind of an interesting little equation. That's your thought for today. My name is Eric Shaw. Blessings to you. Goodbye.